So now that we've integrated AdMob into our applications with all the ad banners, we can now start to earn revenue from our applications. So now we're ready to move on to the second potential way in how we can earn revenue from our apps, and that is in-app purchases. Now, what in-app purchases are is simply the ability for your users to pay a small fee, and in return you give them something within the application. Whether it be, for example, a game where you give them more in-game currency, more maps for a certain game, or just generally remove the ads to create an ad-free experience. It works on both ends. They pay a small fee, you give them something in return. And how we're going to adapt it for this application is to give the users the ability to pay a small fee to remove all the ads within the application. Now, this is great for us because if the user chooses not to remove the ads and doesn't want to spend any money, then we're just going to over time gradually generate revenue from the ads. Or alternatively, they can pay to remove the ads and then we get a one lump sum payment which would compensate for all the ads that they would then begin to start missing. So to add in-app purchases into our applications, it requires quite a few steps. In this lecture, we're going to solely focus on designing the interface and setting up our in-app purchases. Now, I will say this, if you haven't got your developer license just yet, then unfortunately in-app purchases is going to be a little bit tricky for you to implement, as to add in-app purchases into your applications requires us to log into iTunes Connect. Now, this is only accessible for once you do have a developer license. So don't worry if you don't have one just yet. You can completely skip this feature in your application until you do purchase your developer license. And do remember, if you ever want to put your application on the App Store, again, it will require you to have a license. So at some point, you will have to obtain one. So if you already have one anyway, this is working perfectly fine. So what we need to do then is we're going to design our interface and then we're going to create an application ID for that app. So what we're going to be doing then is we're going to be designing the interface and then going on to create an application ID and link it to our project. This enables us to single out our profile that we create within iTunes Connect ready to submit our application. Once we're linked up to that profile, within it, we can then create our in-app purchases, set up the title, the description of the item our user is going to purchase, then implement it into our app. So as we look at our application and how are we going to implement this? Well, what we're going to do is add in a small button within our home view, and that's going to take us to a brand new view within our app. So think of this being the fourth view in the entirety of our whole application. Now this button, like I said, is going to be placed on our home view and it's going to switch us to this view here. So you're looking at the screen now and there's not much room left for us to kind of add in this button. We've already designed our interface, so how are we going to implement this? Well, because it's a button that links to what we can call a store, for example, where our user can purchase in-game items, we don't want it to be kind of huge and in your face on the screen. We want to make sure that it's quite subtle and our user can go to it at any given time. So what we're going to do is going to scroll down now, I'm going to drag and drop a button in, and we place it at the top right hand corner. Now I'll zoom in so we can see this a little bit better now. And what I'll do with this button is change the style of it. So you see, by default, it's set to type of system. This means we can customize it and do anything we want to it. What I'm going to change it to is info light. So we have two versions, light and dark. Dark is more like a dark black color, and light is a lighter blue color, but it doesn't really matter which one you pick because we can then go on to change the color of it anyway. So it's a little bit hard to see right now because the color of it is currently blue, but I'll pin that or drag that up into our top right hand corner. Scroll all the way down to the bottom in the attributes inspector and change the tint from blue, which is default, to white. There we go. So it creates a kind of information button. Now, it's entirely up to you. You can go down this route creating this information button, or alternatively, you can create a custom button with an image that maybe has like a store icon. But I think this works perfectly for us. So I'm going to select it, and what I'm going to do now is pin it just to the top and to the right here. Don't need to change anything else as it is an info button, so by default it will, when changing screen sizes, remain the same size and add those constraints in just so it's pinned to that corner. So when we go through any different screen size now, as you can see, we get bigger and smaller. Again, it's pinned to the top right. Perfect. Okay. So now it's pinned then, we're going to wall in on our project because this view is unreachable. So we're going to select our info button, right click or control click and drag that over to our new view. And I'm going to select to present modularly. Now when that creates that link there, it removes the warning. I'm going to select the link or the segue over to it. And within the attributes inspector, we can then go on to add a transition style. So we talked about transitions before, and there's 4 altogether. My personal favorite is the cross dissolve, which I'm going to select now. So then that allows us then to press that button and take us to this new view, which is going to house all the objects and the capabilities for us to purchase our in-app purchase to remove the ads. So what we need to do now then is design this interface. So pretty much, again, I want to keep within the continuity of our whole application, as you can see, like going through it now. So I'm going to take a few aspects to what we currently have. So I'm going to want the background image. I'm going to take the first label and the second one and a button. So just to save that little bit of time, because these already have the styling options on our application, I'm going to paste these in. Then I'm going to simply remove all the constraints by clearing them. And then I'm going to make sure that all the objects that I've added in, which I believe only the button brings over the action. So let me just double check. Yep. So all the objects now don't have any connections linking to any previous views. So that's a must must do when you're checking stuff with your copy and pasting objects from another view. So this is pretty much going to be our store. And we're going to kind of call it a store because it's where they come to purchase content within the application. It just happens to so be the content they're purchasing is removing the ads. So what I'll do is use our kind of buffer label at the top here to call it the store. Pretty good. And then what I'm going to do is use this button at the very bottom. We'll make it a lot smaller. Let's bring it all the way down. Let's see. Let's bring it to about 75. Is that a reasonable size? What was this again? That's 75 too. Yep. And this can be now our return button. So we press this and it returns us back to the application. So we need to create an action on this to dismiss this view once we've finished using it. Now we're going to be using this label at the top here to be the title of what we're selling to our user. So when we go to create our in-app purchase, we can basically give the item that they're buying a title and a description. And we're going to load this into our label, and we're going to have a text view just down below, which can house a lot more text in a kind of a audible fashion than what a label can do. So I'm going to drag and drop in a text view now. There we go. I'm going to space this completely out here. And we need to add a few styling options now to make it fit in with the rest of our application. So we're going to go to the color of it here, change it to white. I need to get rid of the background color. So let's scroll down to the background and completely get rid of its opacity. Perfect. And then we're going to change the actual font itself and get it themed within our application using Avenue. And book seems like a pretty good one. We'll increase the size a little bit as well, maybe to 20. That should be fine. And then press done. So then basically that's going to be the description of, again, the in-app purchase that we're buying. Now all that's missing now is a button to press to enable us to buy the in-app purchase. So I think I'll drag this up a little bit now and I'll copy and paste this button that we already have in. Just place it up above here and we'll simply call this button purchase. Now it's a little bit bigger than what I like it to be. So let's decrease the actual text size. We're going quite small. How does 25 look? And we'll make it a lot smaller as well. So I'll make it by 50. How does that look within our application? I don't want it to be the dominant button because I don't want to have the users feel like, you know, this is a way to make money for the developer. I just don't want it to be so dominant on the screen. I want them to feel comfortable with their purchases because at the end of the day, we need to give our user total control over what happens within the application. Because at the end of the day, you don't want to ruin their experience. So let's bring this down here. How does that look like for an interface? I think that looks really, really good. Maybe we could do with actually making this text a little bit smaller. Let's go to about 17. 17 looks good to me. So that's the title. This is going to be the description. And again, we're going to be importing this directly from iTunes Connect. So we're going to be downloading data into our application to display it, again, within the label and the text view. Now, there's a few things we need to do because we're working with a text view is select it again. And by default, our text views are editable and selectable. Now, we're going to detoggle both of those so our user can't interact with it. And there we go. So all that's left to do now then is create a brand new class to control our store. And then we need to add in all the actions and outlets and create all the rounded edges for our top label and our 2 buttons. So to do this then, we're going to go back to our project here. We're going to right click on the folder and go to New File. We're going to select Cocoa Touch class and then we're going to simply call it Store View Controller, press Next, and then create and add that into our project. Once we got it in, I'm just going to drag and drop it underneath our end view controller there, so we got all of our classes together. Just makes it a little bit more smart and kind of easier to find within the directory. Then jump back into our main.storyboard. We're going to select the files owner of our view, and then go to the identity inspector. And within custom class, in the class section here, we can now type in the name of the file that we've just added in, so store view controller. Press enter, and by doing that, that links up that new class we just created to the view within our interface. So now all the actions and outlets and the stuff we do, we can now code it and they work together. Pretty cool. So now that we know that works then, we're going to bring up our assistant editor. And again, make sure that we're already in our store view controller. If you're not, you can go for the automatic, go for the manual, go for the project directory to find it. But I'm going to space out now our outlet section here, and then just go on to drag and drop in all of our objects that we're going to be needing to create our rounded edges. So I'm going to start with our first label at the top here and simply call it label 1. And then pretty much I could add the outlets for these, but I don't really want to call them label 2, label 3. So let's go on with these then. So the first button here, I'm going to simply call this the buy button. And the reason I'm giving this an actual name rather than calling it button 1 to what I've normally done within our application is purely down to we're going to be using this button when we come to our purchases. We're going to be enabling and disabling it on whether our user can get the connection for the content for the in-app purchase. So pretty much the return button, I'll call this one button 1. So it's pretty much a theme that I've gone throughout the application. If you add more and more buttons, you can call them button 1, button 2. Same with the labels. And then what I'm going to do then is create the 2 outlets for these. So this is basically going to be our title, or should I call it our product title? Let's call it our product title and connect that up as an outlet. And then the same goes for this one. I'm going to call it our product description. Add that in. And then all that's left to do then is create 2 actions for these 2 buttons. So what I'll do then is get rid of the commented code here, as we don't really need it, and space it out. We're going to first drag and drop in our return button and call it dismiss view. Create that as an action and connect that up. And then for our purchase button, so I'll just simply call this purchase. Create that as an action and then go to connect that up. So we got all the actions and outlets that we're going to be needing within this view of our store. So let's create the rounded edges before we move on to set up and create our in-app purchase. So when the view did load them, we're going to do what we normally do, and that is by getting first our label 1 dot layer dot corner radius to equal the value of 5.0. So at this point now, all these corner radiuses should be really easy for you guys to understand, and pretty much you could say to yourself that you're quite the pro with putting rounded edges on objects within Xcode. So corner radius again to equal 5.0, and then obviously we need to do our buy button, which is our purchase button. So buy button dot layer dot corner radius to equal the value of 5.0. Perfect. So what we'll do now then, we'll do one more kind of feature within this view before we go on to add in all the constraints, because we've missed those out for the moment, is our dismiss view button. So pretty much we need to have this to give us the ability to kind of dismiss the view and go back to our home screen of our application. And to simply do this, again, it's pretty much how we've done it before in the previous views, is to call upon the view itself and do dot dismiss with the animated to completion. Animated, we select to true. Completion, we leave to nil, and end that with a bracket. So before we go to build and run then, we're going to close the assistant editor and go back to our standard editor. And then we're going to add in all the constraints that we're going to be needing. So the first constraint we're going to add in is for our background. So we pin that all the way around. There we go. Add those 4 constraints in. And then we're going to work with all of our objects on top now. So let's take a look at our label here. We should have this set to 75. What's this label to? This label is also 75. And this button itself is also 75. So what I could do is quickly select all 3 of these. And before we go to add in our overall constraints, I'm going to quickly now make sure that these all have equal widths. Again, no matter what happens, add those constraints in. We're going to fixate this height of this button here to stay at 50. And then pretty much select all of our objects then. So the only object that we're not telling it what the height needs to do, again, is our text view here. So then we're going to simply pin all the objects going around. There we go, add in those 16 constraints. So that's maybe adjusted few of them now. So all of these 3 objects, again, are returning themselves to have equal heights. But if I select one of them to have a fixed height, for example, the button, let's fixate this height now. So let's say 50, oh no, 75, that's what we had it to. This one, it will adjust these 2 now, because if this one's got a fixed height of 75, again, and they're all sharing equal heights, so these ones will adjust too. So add it in. There we go. So this means that if we go to work with different screen sizes, if I go smaller, you can see it now all adjusts for us. Back to our original size. If we go even bigger, perfect. It all works now in proportion. It's as simple as that. Constraints are quite easy to get your head around and how to use them. As long as you kind of understand that the objects, when they do get smaller, one of the objects needs to compensate for all the others. Once you get that kind of in your mind of how things work, it's pretty much really easy to create universal interfaces. So we're now going to go to build and run then and just have a quick look at the old interface itself, and just to make sure that we're able to switch to and from it when we want. So we just wait for it to now build and run on the iOS simulator. Okay, then, so now it's built and run. You can see we got our nice little icon on the top right hand side. We press that and it switches to our store view. How cool is that? And I want to make sure as well that we can't select the text view itself. We can't edit it, which is pretty cool. And then when we're done, we press our return button and it takes us back to our home screen. Brilliant. It does everything that we want it to do. So now we can focus on setting up our application ID and creating our application within iTunes Connect, ready to set up the in-app purchase. So if you have a license, you want to head over to developer.apple.com and log into your account, then head straight over to certificates, IDs and profiles. Then from within here, you want to head over to the identifiers and go to app IDs and then go to press the little plus symbol and then go to register a brand new app. So you want to give it a simple description or a name. So I'm going to simply call it Tappy Hands, which is the name of the application. We're then going to scroll down to the bundle ID, and this is the most important part because this is what we want to add and create and then place it into our project. So kind of asks you to do it in a reverse domain format. As you can see for an example here, it says com.domain.appname. So for example, if you're a developer, you will place in maybe your developer name and then the name of the application itself. So I'll put in geekylemon.tappy hands, and that's pretty much how you want to kind of structure, click back on it there, your kind of bundle ID or your app ID. Then we're going to scroll down now, and if you do include anything within here, any of your app services, make sure you toggle it now. By default, in-app purchases is already selected, so we don't need to do anything just there. And then all we need to do is press continue, and then scroll up. We're ready to confirm your app ID. So let's do this and register it. And that is now pretty much all done. So what we want to take then is the com.geeklemon.tappyhands that we created in our bundle ID. Jump back into our project, and then what we're going to do now is head over to our info.plist and then go to the bundle identifier. Within this, we're going to simply change what it's got already placed in there and paste in our com.geeklemon.tappyhands or whatever you used or created. Place that in, press Command and the letter B to build our project. So now our application or our project is now linked to an application ID. So back over into the internet then, We're going to scroll to the top, go back to our account, and then what we want to do and jump into iTunes Connect. And then within iTunes Connect, make sure you select it on the app section or my app section of it, and then go to press the plus symbol to add in a new application. So we're going to select from the platforms, which is going to be iOS. We're now going to give our application a name, so let's call it Tappy Hands. Primary language, we're going to select English, as that's the primary language. It's entirely up to you which one you select. Then bundle ID, again, we're going to select the bundle ID we just created for Tappy Hands. An SKU number, this again comes down to your own reporting. So when we get in stuff like our reports, sales reports and download reports, again the SKU number reports back to it so you can see which app is doing the best. So I'm just going to call it Tappy1 and create that. So that's pretty much all you need to do, and then it goes on to create a profile which will then eventually upload to the App Store when we submit our app for sale. So this pretty much is the back end of what gets displayed within iTunes. We've got an application name, we've got a bundle ID, we can choose the languages, we can view it on the App Store, we can do our pricing, the features, the activity, prepare it for submission. There's a whole lot of stuff that we can potentially do within here. But what we want to focus on is our in-app purchases. So what we're going to be doing is jumping in to our features, and then the first option on the left hand side is in-app purchases, and it does say your first in-app purchase must be submitted with a new version of the app. And basically what that means is if you already have an application on the App Store, again when you create in-app purchases you have to update the app and create a new version. So what we're going to do now then is go on to create and add in a new in-app purchase, and then we're given a huge list of the different types of in-app purchases that we can add in. So the two ones that we want to mainly focus on is either a consumable or a non-consumable. So a consumable is something the user can purchase over and over again, and it does a really good job of giving you an example of what that may be. For example, fish food for a fishing app. A non-consumable, which is what we're going to be using, the ability to remove the ads, is something that can only be purchased once and it doesn't expire. And it gives you an example for a racetrack for a game app. So we're going to select non-consumable and then go to create. And then we have a bunch of more configurations that we need to then choose. So our first one is our reference name. And just like all the other references we've ever done before, when we start to get our sales reports, and if we do have multiple in-app purchases, we can see which one is doing the best. So let's just call this one remove ads. Then we got our product ID, which this works very similar to our bundle ID we just created for our application. So if you still got your bundle ID to hand, simply paste that in, then at the end do dot, and let's say remove ads, and that's going to be the product ID of our in-app purchase. Down below we have the ability to choose how much this is going to cost. So from the price we can go to choose, and then we have a tier. Now this is currently displaying in my own currency tier, which is Great British Pounds. So again, it will either display in your own currency, or alternatively you can then go on to all prices and currencies to see again what the price is for different countries around the world. But I'm going to go for tier 1, as that's the entry level for the lowest price you can charge for an in-app purchase. There we go. And then we scroll down now, and what we want to focus on now is the display name and the description. So the display name is what's going to be displayed in the title label of our store view. So let's just simply say remove ads. There we go. And again, the description exactly the same. This is going to be displayed in the text view of our application. So this is where we're downloading the data, and it allows our users to see what they're purchasing and what it's going to be doing. So for example, in the description, we could simply say remove all the ads within the game to have an ad-free experience. There we go. And then that, when we call upon it to be displaying the application, that's what's going to be displayed in the two objects. And that's pretty cool. So the only thing that's left to do now then is provide a screenshot. And what that means is we need to give Apple, so when we review, or when we submit our application to the App Store and it gets reviewed by one of Apple's kind of employees, they need a screenshot for the in-app purchase to see where in the application it's going to be displayed. It just helps the review process run a lot smoothly and reviewed a lot quicker. And again, this is a very simple thing to do. We're going to bring up our simulator and then go over to the store section. And then once you're in this view, all we need to do is press Command and the letter S. So by doing that, that has now created a screenshot of this view within our desktop. So if I then go to choose file and then make sure that I'm on my desktop, you can now see this screenshot has now taken place. So I'll open that up and that will now add itself to the screenshot section, and you can see the screenshot is now all placed in. So all that's left to me to do now is scroll back to the top and then go press to save. So by saving that now, it's going to create our in-app purchase ready for us to simply use. So the in-app purchase is now ready to submit. Perfect, works brilliant. So if I get back to the overview now, you can see that I remove ads, non-consumable. That is the product ID ready to submit, meaning that the in-app purchase is ready to be submitted with the bundle when we submit that to go ahead and sell our application on the App Store. Now, all we need to do now then is within the application, when we set it all up in the next coming lectures, is simply reference our product ID, and by simply doing that, we can take all the data from within iTunes Connect to then display it within our application. Now, don't worry if it's the first time you're using iTunes Connect and all this stuff is a bit confusing. We dive back into this and go deeper and explore it in a full detail when we go to submit our application to the App Store. And we're teaching you everything you need to know within iTunes Connect and how we can create our profile to display within the App Store and iTunes.